tape number 4, interview with Mr. Larry Pick, December the 8th, 1996. When we ended, you were talking about arriving in Salaspils.
Yes.
I'd like to just ask something about the Riga ghetto. Did that have fences around it or wires
Yes.
around it?
Yes, to the best of my knowledge. If it didn't have then, it had later. I spent
You came
almost a
back there.
year
I
in the ghetto.
see.
It certainly had a fence,
Uh-huh.
double fence,
Right.
in fact.
And that you mentioned that in Salaspils there were no fences, no
There was
great.
no fence at
But
that time.
where did the Jewish police go with you from
No.
Riga?
No.
No, where they met you there.
No, that was Jewish police, which was already, when we got there were already approximately, I would say, 800 people there in 2 barracks. People from Hanover, people from Jungfernhof, from another camp, were sent to Salaspils. Jungfernhof, J, U, N, G as in George, E, R, no, Jungfern, excuse me, G, F, E, R, N, H, O, F, Jungfernhof.
HOF. And that is a camp?
That was a farm, where a former farm, which is SS, built up again as a farm. It was neglected. I was never in Jungfernhof, but it was a farm, and to grow their vegetables and things. And people from Stuttgart, a transport from Stuttgart and from Nuremberg had been sent there. And some of those people had been sent to Salaspils. It could very well be, I don't know, that a transport before us from the ghetto left already for Salaspils.
How did the Jewish police behave?
At that time, pretty good, pretty fair. And again, you had people who did the most necessary things, and some people who were, well, they were better than the Germans, but then
And where were they from, the Jewish police?
they, the ones who didn't behave so badly, who behaved badly, were usually from small towns, and usually were Viehhändler, were cattle merchants. They weren't the most educated people. They suddenly got power over people over somebody who might have been a lawyer or a doctor.
Were they German speaking or
No,
Latvian?
they're German. No,
German.
We were not in any contact at that time with any Latvian Jews. Latvian Jews were in a separate ghetto, in the Latvian ghetto, which was separated by barbed wire.
In
Riga.
In Riga, I see.
In Latvia, in Salaspils at that time, were only Jews from Germany, Austria, and Czechoslovakia.
See. And were there people there already when you got there?
Yes, there were people there. In fact, I was very surprised. I saw some people, they were not friends, but they were acquaintances from Stuttgart. Via Jungfernhof, they were shipped to Salaspils. I hadn't seen them in years. They were together with me in a Jewish sports club in Stuttgart.
So who guarded the camp?
Latvian SS with very low intelligence. They must have picked them up from peasants and put them in uniform. I'm not even sure whether some could read or write. We, in our barrack, we were 5 high, 5 tiers, one on top of the other, and you'd use a ladder to crawl up. And we were better. Our barrack was better than Barrack 1 or 2 because they were 6 tiers high. So you were even closer together in that bunk, in that tier, whatever you want to call it. You couldn't sit. I mean, you could only lean forward.
How many in a tier?
Well, it's
In a bunk?
Or along in the barrack, about I would say about 500 people.
No, but these
In
were
the
sort of
bunk.
beds or bunks to sleep on.
Yes, I mean it was. I don't know whether you ever saw the picture in Yad Vashem of that. It's also one in Washington, in the Holocaust Museum. They looked exactly like that picture shows. We slept on, didn't have straw, burlap bags with straw. We only got Excelsior, the wood shavings. And the wood shavings clumped together, so I was lumpy. And, well, we were tired. We worked 12 hours. We had to work. I worked at the sawmill at the Duna. Duna is the river where Riga is nearby, and where the wooden logs were shipped down the river. We had to pull it in from the river, and we carried over to the saw. And when it was cut into boards, we took the boards and loaded it on trucks. And the trucks went to the camp Salaspils to build barracks, more barracks. It was very hard work because first of all, our clothing was not sufficient. I remember one fellow who was arrested on the street from Vienna. He wore patent leather shoes. Now, I don't know what he wore as socks or so, but you can imagine. And the Latvian and German SS, as well the Latvian farmers, they had those fur hats and line coats with fur colors. Well, we were there, there's very little food, freezing. One of the assistant of the barrack elder took a liking to me. The barrack elder was a Jewish fellow by the name of Stern. He had his own room in that barrack, where his own room. He went up a little ladder and he had a cubby hole where he was with his sons. He got, of course, more food being...
What does bargello mean?
Baracke?
Oh, barak.
Baracke means a big hut, a big building, wooden
Barrack,
building.
yeah.
Barrack.
And what does Ello? You said...
Barrack 1.
Oh, okay.
But I was in Barrack 3.
Uh-huh.
By the time we are finished, you will be used to my German accent.
No, it wasn't. I wasn't sure what it was.
Yeah, it's a big wooden building, a barrack.
Yeah.
The assistant of his, who was a fellow from Hanover, I forgot his name, middle-aged man, he took a liking to me. I was one of the youngest in Salaspils. The unwritten rule was nobody under 18 would go to Salaspils, but I wasn't 18 yet. I celebrate is not the right word. I became 18 while I was in Salaspils. He made me a Gruppenführer. A Gruppenführer means you had a group of people under you. You were supposed to get more food. I had again such a swatch. I got more food for about a day or 2 or 3, which I shared with my father, and then I got the same food like everybody else. And I had one experience in Salaspils. I was then transferred actually to helping build the barracks. I was no longer working on the Sägewerk at the sawmill, which was, I worked on the night shift, which was for 12 hours, plus the walking back and forth from camp. I was helping Latvian workmen building new barracks. One day a Latvian civilian came up to me in perfect German. He started to talk to me. And he asked me why don't I try to escape or commit suicide, what kind of hope I had. And I told him that in my opinion, Germany would lose the war. I did not know whom I was talking to. I mean, it was, again, youth. And he asked me what gave me that idea. And I told him, well, the Germans who had the front was in a zigzag, had pulled back to straight. He said they only did it to straighten out. I said, so why didn't they straighten out going forward and made a line? He just looked at me and he walked away. And a few days later, I saw him together with some other Latvian SS and German SS, and he had a Latvian SS officer uniform, and I kept out of his way. Salaspils was one of the worst camps because you had a combination of hunger where people actually starved to death. Many. Cold, bitter cold.
Were you ever punished?
Well, I was found, the assistant commandant SS found Tegemeyer was his name. Tegemeyer, I guess T as in Tom, Ekemayer. He saw me scribbling one day on a pile of boards, and he came up to me. He always walked very silently, and he saw that I was writing, and I had written a diary which I had started, and he took it out of my hand. It wasn't much of a diary. It wasn't like Anne Frank. Don't get me wrong. It was like today, this and this guy was hanged for that of so-called offense. Or today I found half a potato in my soup. It was a big event. To have
You were writing on what?
I had a notebook. Don't ask me now where I got that notebook from. I had a pencil, and I wrote. I always was interested in writing. I was interested in reading. And probably I exchanged it maybe for a handkerchief or for something else, for a piece of bread with somebody else. And he said to Commander Tuort, go to the commanding barrack, to the barrack where the chief of the police was. And he walked behind me, beating me with his cane. All those SS people, Latvian and German, who had walking canes, partly to keep their balance on the snow, on the ice, and partly to beat us. And when we arrived at a Kommandantur, there was the chief of the police, Jewish chief of police. His name was Siegfried Kaufmann. Tall fellow, who knew me, had seen me. Maybe we had exchanged already a few words. And Tegemeyer said to him, translated into English, it gets nicer and nicer here, now they are starting to write diaries. And he handed it over to Kaufmann, and Kaufmann hardly looked at it and threw it in the stove. There was a wood-burning stove there. I saw the surprised look on that German SS Nazi. And Kaufmann said, I take care of it. He says, give him lashes. Kaufmann gave me, I forgot, 10 or 20 lashes. Kaufmann was very decent in that respect. I kept my coat on, so it didn't hurt too much. He saved my life. I saved his later.
How?
In a ghetto. Anyhow. There was people went out of, there was no gate, no fence. You could go out of the gate, out of the camp, and find a Latvian, or bother with Latvian workmen. You had a sack, or the people who were in charge of the clothing barrack, where all the clothing was sorted, smuggled it out, gave it to you, you bartered it for some food, and you got a commission, and you split it with them. I had heard that on the near the mass grave, which was outside of the camp. You walked through a piece of woods until you got to the mass grave. You sometimes encountered Latvians, and there was an opportunity to bother. And two of the Gruppenführer of the mass grave had been found out bothering and were hung. And I volunteered to be the Gruppenführer for that group of people at a mass grave, for the only reason, of course, to hoping that I would get some food for my father and for myself. And when I had volunteered, Kaufmann, the same fellow, took me underneath the gallows where my predecessor was still hanging, because everybody who was hung stayed there for 24 hours. And I never forget, he said to me, be careful, you have your whole life ahead of you. Don't take too many risks. I became the Gruppenführer of the mass grave in Salaspils. Every day we had corpses, mostly from hunger or frozen. Some had been shot, or few had been hung. The gallows was only for one person. They hung one after another. At one time, my former Hebrew teacher came. His name was Yaffe, and asked me for permission. He came with a corpse. He was on the so-called Beerdigungskommando. Beerdigungskommando was funeral commando. He brought the corpses from the camp to the mass grave, his people. He asked me for permission to recite the Kaddish, because somebody had known was that corpse. My Hebrew teacher asking me for permission to recite the Kaddish. Of course, I told him yes. Later on, I was berated by my fellow workers why I did that, because if an SS man would have come, it would have been all punished. It was not permitted to pray or do anything. People were buried one on top of each other. There was some lime put on them, and then some earth. And one day, a group of German SS, with them Obersturmbannführer Lange, the chief of the Sicherheitspolizei of all the SS, was with them. And with them was a young, blondish man, maybe in his late 20s, tall. He had a smile, a sarcastic smile on his face. There was some Latvian SS, one Latvian SS officer, I remember. And Lange said to the Latvian SS man, tell him to turn around. And that person must have understood German, because he turned around, and Lange shot him from the back in the head. The man twisted around and he fell right into the mass grave.
Why was he being shot?
I don't know. I don't know who he was. I don't know. And he fell right into the mass grave. And Lange noticed that he wore a wedding band. And he looked around and he caught my eye. And he says, take the wedding band off. And I fell or jumped or slid into the mass grave. The man was lying there. And I slipped his wedding band off, and either he was not quite dead, or he was, anyhow, he gave some kind of a sound. Yet, and I instinctively pulled back, and Lange said to me, are you afraid? Hast du Angst? And my answer was, no Unterscharführer. Well, he was a major colonel. I think he was Obersturmbannführer lange. I addressed him as a sergeant. And I think that saved my life, because he still had that revolver in his hand. The others started to laugh, because I addressed him as a sergeant, a top man, and he just turned around and walked away. After they were gone, before we buried him, we took his shoes. He had riding boots on. I didn't do that. The other ones did it. And he had 2 pair of pants on, and he was circumcised.
Okay, he was Jewish.
I don't know, I guess so. And he was buried like hundreds of others.
What were the mass graves?
There was only one mass grave in Salaspils.
What do you know about them? Who was buried there?
Everybody who died at my time, I can only later on it became a completely different camp. At my time, Salaspils goes from middle of January 1942 to approximately middle of July 1942. Only people, with the exception of that one person, who had died or had been killed in Salaspils. Nobody from the outside came, at least from the time I was at that mass grave.
How big was it?
It was big. If you ask me how many feet or so, I would say there were about 6 or 8 on top of each other. And when I left, it was maybe 60% full. At one time, the commandant of Salaspils, Nickel was his name. Nickel came out and he said, "How many are in there now?" And I don't remember what I told him exactly. I must have said 400 or 500. And he walked away again.
Were you there daily?
Daily, yes.
You
daily.
worked there daily?
Daily.
And
yes.
exactly what was your role there? What did you have to do there? Did you have specific
The
things
corpses, which were, I was not by myself. I had 5, 6, 7 other people with me. The corpses which were brought to us, we put them into the mass grave. We covered them with lime. We put them next to the depends if the pile was high enough. We put them next to we started a new pile, or we put them on the pile and put earth in between. At one time, it just came to my mind, I thought of it. While I was on the mass grave, a fellow I knew, young kid, he wasn't much older than I am, came with a Latvian SS man, and my fellow workers moved away, and I wanted to move with them. The fellow was crying. It was obvious to me that he was caught at probably trying to barter. And he said to me, 9 zuschauen. No, you stay here and watch it. And I don't know whether he shot him with what is called a dum-dum bullet, which splatters your brain, or splatters on impact, or whether it was to such a close range, but his whole head splattered around. And one time I was caught bartering with one of those not too educated SS men, Latvian. And it might sound unbelievable, but believe me, it's the truth. I had all kinds of things with me, kerchief, maybe a ring. And I made him appear and disappear. Yeah. And he was so impressed. I mean, he was very simple-minded. I could see it. He took the ring and the kerchief or whatever I had, and he let me go. Whether he did it because he was impressed with my magic tricks, or whether this better he had the ring than somebody else, if he turns me in, I don't know. But that saved my life, magic.
You said you saved this Siegfried Kaufmann, who was
Well,
a
that's
Jewish.
later in the ghetto.
That's
If you
later
remind
on.
me, I
I
don't
see.
want to jump otherwise.
Did people have special privileges in
Salisbury?
Salisbury?
Well, there were a few people who, by nature of their jobs, had privileges. If you worked in the kitchen, of course you took as much soup as you wanted. If you worked in the Kleiderkammer, where the clothing was assorted, and the suitcases were opened, you found food in some of the suitcases. Of course, the camp elder and the police got better rations. The Gruppenführer did not get any better rations. I mean, they were treated like anybody else practically. They were just responsible for counting the people actually, and make sure that all the people got out of the barrack in the morning. The food was unbelievable bad, unbelievable. You got in the morning, you got about 1 liter of, or as much as you wanted because nobody wanted. It was hot, a black liquid. I don't know whether it was coffee or tea or how it got black, I don't know. At noontime, you got 1 liter of soup. It was very watery, as I said before. If you found half a potato, it made your day. And in the evening, you got, I think it was 250 or 300 gram of very, very coarse, bad bread. Besides, the rumor went it was made out of flour and bark rind. You had in your hand, it practically crumbled. We didn't get any margarine or anything. And that was, of course, not sufficient. So either you bartered, you risked your life to stay alive, or you died of hunger. And the cold weather was also a big influence, because we didn't have the appropriate clothing. We had to stand at a peril for a long time. Also, it was not as long as in other camps. The Gruppenführer was more or less responsible for his people. At one time, a young fellow, somebody had escaped from Salisbury. It was very easy to escape. I mean, there was no wire. But where would you go to? Where would you? We only spoke German and the Latvians. I mean, I think he was found. I really don't remember. But Lange came, and Lange said to the barack elder for barack number 2, you pick out 10 hostages. And this fellow's name was Horst Wertheim, young fellow. He was from Hanover Castle. He said to Lange, I'm the first one. The other 9 you have to pick for yourself.
He was Jewish.
He was Jewish, yes. Lange did not say anything. He turned around and walked away. About a month later, the same scenario happened. Somebody escaped, and this time it was from my barrack 3, and the barrack elder was asked to take 10 hostages. Obvious, if he would have refused, I think Lange, who felt badly that he got soft or didn't kill the other guy, wanted to have another opportunity. This fellow, this barrack elder, Stern, he picked 10 people, selected 10 people. And Lange asked, who is from Brunner, from those 10? And a young kid, 19, 20 years old, stepped forward, and he asked that he be given 10 lashes, which he did, and those were real lashes. He cried, and then Lange shot him after that.
To change our tape again.